And the team said to me, "Hey, coach, why can't we do this? Why can't we win the conference? Why can't we go to the national tournament? We believe we have everything we need in this room right now." And I said, "All right, guys, you really want to do that? We're going to have to step a couple things up." And they said, "Yes, coach, we'll do it." I said, "Are you sure?" They said, "Yes, coach, we want to do whatever we can this year." And let me tell you, they did.
Eric Spangler coached a small Division III men's tennis team to a top 20 national ranking, to tournament wins, and to their best record in more than a century. On paper, none of that should have happened. But with the right culture, drive, and leadership, Eric and the team made it so. They also managed a 3.8 GPA off the court. Eric is himself the grateful beneficiary of exceptional people in his life. His parents, teachers, community leaders, all people of high character that will make you rethink the traditional model of how we parent, coach, and develop talent. Eric has been a student in our academy, and we and his peers are all better for having met him. I'm Carl Tischler of the HPA Academy. Thanks for joining us.
Eric, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Excited to be here.
Great. Eric is the men's tennis coach at Haverford College. That's a college, but for those of you not in the US, that's university level. And really just so happy to have him as a guest and a friend and a student of the Academy. Really looking forward to getting into that. I guess, I mean, the podcast is about Eric, not about me, but I'm going to start with a bit of intro on context and how things fit together. I really, truly believe I was the worst university level tennis player of all time, like in the universe. Skills were okay, but the mental part of the game, mental toughness, sports psychology, that was just always my bugbear. And that was not fun, I can tell you. But as a result of that and that whole experience, that from a personal standpoint got me forever interested in sports psychology and in performance psychology, and just been appointed team coach. Just to start us as we do in the academy, we kind of think about career in the broadest sense, in a 60-year sense. So Eric, in terms of just your own origins, what got you into tennis originally, and kind of take us through all of that.
In terms of getting into tennis, it's a bit of a non-traditional route for those that know. I guess you could call it high-level junior performance. I was not really so much a part of that in a traditional sense, but the route I took was I had a racket in my hand from a very young age because my father, who was a school teacher, would teach tennis in the summers to the local community, kids camps in the morning, and adults that wanted to play, really anybody, at a really good price. So he just really cared about getting people on the tennis court, which is very admirable in the way that coaching goes. So I would be out there. There's nowhere else for me to be, and I was always playing sports. I tell many people I don't speak other languages very well. I don't really have skill on instruments, but I speak the language of sport. So I was always running around with a racket or a ball or something. And my dad, I still have my first tennis racket actually that he gave me, a little tiny racket, I think a 23-inch length versus the 27 that adults use. And so I just enjoyed it. And we would play tennis, and I would be at the camp. And sometime around the age of 11 or 12, my dad would probably remember better than I decided to focus on one sport. I was pretty good at soccer, football for the international community. And I think at that point I was a bit better at football. And then there was only time for one sport, really, for the parents to drive you around, or just to go to enough practices, essentially, if you really want to excel. And so I chose tennis, and I still don't really remember why. I speculate a lot of reasons. I'm an only child. Maybe it's nice to not depend on anyone else in the sport. Um, it's a fascinating journey. Tennis is, even at a young age, very emotional, and it really grabs you. And so I think I was really drawn to that journey of the sport, even maybe more so than the sport itself. And so around that age, I committed to really training and stepping up the frequency of practice. And my parents accommodated it. And we found an organization. I believe it was actually run out of a Parks and Rec service. It was very affordable for the community. And we had a great coach there who was running the program. He's now the Howard University coach.
Mm.
So he's gone in the college route. And the director of the organization is one of the more well-known wheelchair tennis players named Brenda Gilmore. She's served the tennis community, the underprivileged community, especially in tennis inner city and such, for probably 40 or 50 years. She's a legend in my eyes. So she put this thing together for us to have accessible tennis. And so we would play, lots of us on the court, great coaches, and they built a community though. We had friendships, we worked hard, and we were all from different backgrounds. And so we did that for a few years, and then that's when Coach Nick, the now Howard coach, moved into the college route. And at that point, I went to find a new tennis center. I was 1 year out of university, and so I really wanted to get as good as I possibly could for about a year. And that's where I found JTCC. That's one of the top training academies for tennis on the East Coast, and it's internationally known now. There's several players on the pro circuit who have done quite well. I think the most prolific is probably Francis Tiafoe, for those that know tennis. And so I was able to play there, but it was expensive. And so my mother and father they talked to the general manager and said, how can we make this work? It's the only place really around. We want to step up the training. How can we make this work? And the general manager, AJ Pent, who's been a job reference on every job I've ever applied for to this day, we have a great relationship. He said, well, we need some tutors. You're both teachers. We've got full-time students here that need some extra work. If you can tutor, we can make it work financially for you. So my parents would drop me off to play and they would tutor while I played all the time, which now I look at, I didn't understand the scope of that. Now that I'm in my 30s, I understand what that time commitment really means. And that's one thing I wanted to make a point of on this podcast is none of that would have been possible if my parents not giving extra hours and just never said a complaint, just wanted me to be on the tennis court. And I think because of this, I innately knew that every moment was valuable. So I made the most of every moment. And that's kind of a big part of my journey to this day, is that every moment really counts. But I realize now that I learned that very early on from my parents' example.
When did you decide that you wanted to compete in tennis? At what stage did you say, hey, this is something that I want to compete in?
Man, forever, Carl. I've always been competitive, even when an only child in the house by myself as a kid, or figuring out my own thing, that I found a way to compete against myself or make something into a competition. I just think I don't know, maybe I was born that way, to put it in a very vague sense. But I enjoyed the training. I love a good workout. I like going out there and practicing even to this day, but everything has had a smidge of competition since I can remember. So I don't really have a great answer for you besides kind of built in.
Just had it, yeah. So back on the storyline, that year, that was what, like sort of senior year of high school?
That's correct. I think winter junior to senior summer, so maybe a little over a year with some breaks in between there.
Right. And you grew up in Maryland?
In Maryland. That's correct. That's where the training academy was. That's where the Parks and Rec organization. I grew up just outside Southeast Washington, D.C.
Amazing. What a I don't know what the right word is. What a blessing to have met those different people along the way that have made tennis accessible. It's just, yeah, very, very cool. So you had that time in the academy really to train. You talked about that, just an amazing sacrifice from your parents to enable that. What came next for you at the end in terms of thinking about next steps and playing at the university level?
Yeah, I remember wanting to play at university level was the main driver of going to a higher level training academy like this. And so that was kind of, the goal at that point. I think for me, just as much of that goal was just the process involved. I just wanted to train and get better. And so that a lot of that was just good enough for me at a time. But I believe the fall of my senior year, so maybe I'd been training for about 9 months. That's when I was able to get the opportunity to play at Salisbury University. The coach, I can now say former head coach there because he just retired after 25 years, Randy
Wow.
Halfpap. My coach, he was recruiting me and it was a great fit. This is Salisbury University, about 2.5 hours east of where I lived, near the coast of the U.S. in Maryland. And so it was a great fit all around. I had a couple of friends that went there. Was able to study what I wanted to study and have a good fit athletically. And so I committed to the team, I believe, late fall of my senior year. And then I wanted to train still just as much. I think it's difficult at that point when you commit players if they still have the same intensity and purpose and motivation behind their training. That's something I try to find in the recruits that I look for. But I did have that, so I was able to continue getting better for about another 9 months there before university started. And it helps a lot, Carl, to be on an upward swing emotionally, mentally, and in the tennis game. When you enter college, I didn't think I mean, looking on paper, I wasn't supposed to have the success I had at this level of Division III NCAA university tennis, but a lot of it is just where you are and where you're going, I think.
Was there a really significant increase in your skills, like match management, mental toughness during that time that you were training at that intense level? Feel there's a real improvement?
It's funny. I look back at that and I looked back at my results just to kind of compare and contrast with recruits that I am recruiting right now. And I didn't really show many results. I do think I was getting better, but I lost a lot. And it was because when you train and develop, it takes time for that to translate into match play. And a lot of these guys I was playing against in the junior circuit had already gotten to a higher point. And so there's almost a lag time behind my training and match performance. I do believe I was developing well. I had really great training. I actually was working almost every day with one of my mentors to this day, Chuck Creasy, who is one of the most successful university coaches of all time. And he just happened to take a break and coach at the tennis center where I was playing. So I had a lot of time on court with him. He kind of took me under his wing a lot. And he's actually now back coaching. He was at Clemson before that. And then he took the break to coach academy. And now he's back at the Citadel in South Carolina.
Oh, wow. Yeah, South Carolina. Sure. For sure. So you felt that during that time where the results weren't showing, but you're also competing against people at a much higher level, that you kind of had that patience and belief that, in the lag, that things will come through, or did you find that frustrating?
Oh, yeah. It was frustrating. Nobody likes to lose. And I didn't know at the time. I was 16. I just wanted to get better. And I thought getting better at tennis and in the practice meant you're going to win more matches. But what do you know? Life's a bit nonlinear in that way.
Yeah.
And that's something I try to impart upon my players quite a bit. But no, it was a lot of speed bumps. I mean, I remember I was training very hard And I was so excited, played a couple of tournaments, lost in the first round. And sitting in the car with my dad, I remember this moment outside the tennis center. And I said, Dad, like I can't even look at my rackets right now. I'm so frustrated and disappointed in this. And we talked about it for a moment. And this is my dad who'd been sitting there tutoring while I was playing and driving me through traffic at 3 o'clock in the afternoon around DC highways, which is a nightmare.
Yeah.
For anyone around this area knows it. And he said, okay, or if you're not enjoying the sport, you don't have to play. And I was like in disbelief. I couldn't believe it. I said, you've done all this to allow me to play. He said, but if you're not enjoying it, just put the rackets down. You don't have to play. And that's just the highest level of leadership and parenting and all of that. And I did. I actually don't think I picked up the racket for about 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly when this was, maybe end of my junior year, early senior year. It's hard to remember. And then one day, the love just fire. I just woke up with it and I was playing again. But if he hadn't given me the opportunity to take that break, I don't know where I'd be right now, to be honest, because there's a lot of players out there that aren't allowed to take a step back at times, and they suffer for years to come if you don't have time to process those emotions and take a step back and reflect. And it was one of the highest level moves that I've seen as a parent, a sport parent especially.
I mean, the classic saying in tennis, I'm sure it's the same in lots of sports, but I think the effect of it in tennis, for the reasons you were saying before, where it's such an emotional thing, is, the classic tennis parents write a check and then they put all the pressure on you to perform no matter what, right? And your parents are, the opposite of that. I mean, that's one of the best. Yeah, it's very inspirational. All of that is really inspirational.
I told them thank you all the time for it. Now that I have the perspective of as I'm a little bit older.
Amazing. And your parents, if I remember, I know, as you said, your father was teaching tennis in the summer, and that's it. But your parents weren't like athletes themselves by training, also, just to put it in context. Or was that part of where they came from and their kind of understanding of how do you develop talent if talent wants to develop?
I don't think they had a really much of a grasp of developing into competitive spaces. My father, he's probably taught more tennis than I have just through his years, but it was not performance competitive based. He ran high school teams. He ran a little junior team tennis thing as well.
All right. So you show up freshman year at Salisbury. You're on this upward trajectory in terms of skills, in terms of the mental toughness and all of these things and wanting to compete. What was that experience like, transitioning to play at the next level? How did you guys do as a team? How did you do individually?
Well, it was bumpy for sure. I absolutely loved being a part of the team. Even to this day, team members are some of my best friends. I've been in weddings. I've traveled the world with my teammates, and that was probably the biggest part, looking back, of getting me acclimated, because I had a lot to learn personally, just being away from home and such. I was always a good independent person, but I needed to understand really what time management meant, what working hard meant, or should I say doing hard work instead of just working hard all the time. And I think there's a difference there. And I was afraid. I was a really nervous guy. I got thrown in. I was a bit better than some of the other incoming players, and I got thrown into number 2 singles slot and number 1 doubles slot immediately. And I was not sure if I could perform at that level, and ended up doing okay. But I went on a pretty early match lose streak. Fortunately, I knew what losing felt like, and I was able to stick with it. I mean, truthfully speaking. And so, but having a great coach, good assistant coaches that cared, a big team of guys that we had fun on the court and off the court, and we trained hard. You know, it was a school that really supported athletics quite well. There's a lot of athletes there. Work hard on the court was just the way it was, and so good facilities, 12 outdoor courts, lighted, 3 indoor courts. You know, we had the resources we needed, and for me, it was just getting over myself quite a bit.
Right. In retrospect, if you had been the coach at Salisbury at the time, knowing you, would you have put yourself at the number 2 spot and number 1 doubles to begin with? Was it throwing you in the deep end too much, do you think?
Man, I look back now, and if you look at my results, nobody would question it at all. But I think if I had a different mindset, it could have gone the other direction. I think if I was that coach, I wouldn't have wanted to. I would have. I do think our number 3 player that year, who's one of my closest friends to this day, was a better player than me objectively, but he struggled with injuries, so there wasn't really the opportunity to keep him high in the lineup. Beyond that, I do think I would probably have beaten most of the other guys on the team, even if it was close matches. So, you know, didn't really have many choices. I don't think even if I was a head coach, I probably would have made the same decision. For doubles, I don't know. I'd have to look a little deeper at the doubles options, but we had a good year in doubles as well. I just had a really good partner. My partner was unbelievable. I mean, some of the striking he could do is really hard to believe. We were wondering why he wasn't in the pros at times, but he is a spectacular doubles player, and that really saved me in a lot of ways.
And how was your chemistry between you two?
Oh, great. I just saw him a couple months ago. He lives in Florida now, and ever since the first day, you know, we were having a good time together. We got along like 2 peas in a pod. We'd have dinner all the time. It was great. And I think that's one of the most important things that allows a team to stay together.
Definitely.
It's a good point. I hadn't considered that as much, how the chemistry really benefited us. That's a great point, Carl.
So, Eric, I know you're very modest, so I'm going to have to extract this from you in the question to get you to do it. But so you came in again, coming off this academy training and with a lot of things. But looking at you at the beginning of freshman year, you would not have expected that by the time you graduated, you would have achieved what you achieved. Can you just, I know you don't like doing this, but can you talk us through some of those achievements and what you think helped your college tennis career be so successful?
All right, Carl, I'll do my best. I did, you know, I think, like I said, my first year I was just kind of figuring it all out, but I did receive Rookie of the Year. I believe it was co-Rookie of the Year in the conference. It was a good competitive Division III NCAA conference, and I believe I got co-Rookie of the Year with a Mary Washington player who was our biggest rival at the time. But that's good achievement on my end. It was a good, showed I had a good first year at university. But I realized something after that year, that nobody was really, I don't know how to say this politely, nobody really cared enough. And I think in Division III, for those that don't know, there's no sports scholarships. So everybody's there on their own volition. Everybody's there because they want to be. Nobody has to be there. You can quit the next day if you want. So we're not tied by the dollars. And that really changes things, because then who wants it more is often the one who could be more successful in the long run. And I think I realized that at some point, whether through conversation or just reflection. I said, okay, I had a good year. I didn't know I could, you know, receive this award and such, but if I really try and dig into this tennis, I might be able to achieve something. And as you know, I've been competitive since probably the day I could say of my first word. And so this was good enough for me to want to really commit to it. And so I said, okay, where are the things lacking? And I found these 2 tennis books, probably the 2 most famous tennis books, Winning Ugly and The Inner Game of Tennis.
Best.
And unbelievable.
Fantastic books. Yeah.
polar opposite books. One was more strategy, tactical, match play, and the other is separating the difference of your thinking and acting minds, which is called I think mind one and mind two or something like that.
Right.
So when you combine those, you start learning a lot. But I didn't really lose much after that. I continued to train hard all 4 years. I was getting better. I was finding ways to improve my technique, and then reading these books and starting to observe the game at a closer level. I was still actually doing better in the classroom too. I think tennis is a holistic sport. Things go hand in hand, life and tennis. And so the reason I'm going deep in this, Carl, besides just talking about my achievements, is because I think the storyline matters a bit, and just committing to understanding the strategic, the tactical side of the game, what's actually happening in the match that is out of your control, that you didn't realize was out of your control. You just go in a whole different plane of match management. When you accept that some things are out of your control and work on the things that are in your control, everything changes in life as well. And so I just kind of gradually worked through these books. I realized what my strengths were on the court. I started later than a lot of these guys I was playing against, so I needed to maximize my mental toughness and my fitness, even though some of them hit the ball harder than I did.
Mhm.
So then, we went that route, and I think after starting my sophomore year, I might have only lost 5 more singles matches the rest of the time, maybe 6, something like that, in competitive match play. And in doubles, again, I had a great partner, so I learned a lot from watching him, and I studied the doubles a bit, because doubles is a bit more tactical than singles in a lot of ways. And we went undefeated my sophomore year, and I was injured part of it, and we still kept winning. And so there was just a lot, but it comes down to every point counts, and not everybody views it that way, or can't have the capacity to view it that way. Even myself, but those that can do it more than less, they'll probably win more points in the long run. So not a lot of awards per se through the next couple of years. I was playing at the 2 singles spot, 1 doubles spot. We did go to the national tournament my sophomore year, which is the top 16 doubles teams in the country. And we got beaten the first round by the eventual finalist, and learned a lesson there. But it was a great reward. We went undefeated in doubles that year, and we got to go national tournament. I saw a different level of competition, and that opened my eyes a bit too. Junior year, I was at 2 singles spot as well. I think I went 1 loss that year, and then senior year, we graduated our number 1. I was able to play the 1 spot, and that's where I said, okay, what can we do this year? The goal is national tournament for singles, top 32 in the country, and what do I need to do to get to that point? And I realized there was a little more off the court I had to do. We could get into that, but I was able to get to the national tournament, to go into the accolades. The last match I played was the one that broke some records. If I hadn't won that last match, I wouldn't have been an All-American. If I hadn't won that last match, I wouldn't have been the most winning player in program history. It was that 1 match difference. I didn't know at the time that these things were on the line. I was not paying attention to it. But that's a process of embracing the journey itself. And so I was able to achieve those awards. I think I was MVP on the team that year, and top 20 singles player, top 25 doubles team. And just kind of, I was maximizing my ability. If you give me another year, I think I'd do better, even in another year, because of the trend that was going. But in the 4 years, I think I'm pretty content with what I put into it, especially the last 3 years, and then the awards and accolades are a side effect of that. Fortunate to have a good environment to participate in.
So there's something in there. I know we're going to come and talk about this. It has a lot of resonance with what you've been able to do later on, but just to go on it, there is that thing for people that don't understand about Division III. It's kind of the equivalent of like, you have like the Premier League, right, which would be like Division I or the Pro. You're talking about a league that's different, and I think, and what you just described is so powerful. It is that thing where the decision to step in and try to, not because people are expecting it of you, not because you're getting paid for it, not because you're on the front of magazines, but because you've decided you want to try and really raise the level and compete. I think you have just stories like your own of people in Division III sports that are just so compelling, right? I mean, I don't want to inadvertently offend our pro athlete students and stuff like that. I know it's obviously great, but I think the stories and the storylines in Division III sports are, first of all, really relatable. But I think they're also just so powerful because the amount of transformation that you can see and that a person can do and the amount of development they can do is just so amazing. And to have gotten to that level, again, for people that don't know, but to be the winningest in your university, but to make All-American, that journey from a 3-year-old kid on the court being interested and intrigued in a 23-inch racket to there, that's a really amazing journey. So university ends. What's your thought about what's next, and how did you get into coaching?
Absolutely. And, as far as I can remember, I think my dad will attest to this. Going back to when I started university, I believe I told my father that I didn't want to go to grad school and I didn't want to coach tennis for a living. And so halfway through my senior year, my head coach, Randy, asks me, "Hey, what are you planning to do after you graduate?" And I didn't really know yet. I've been doing a lot of internships. I was studying kinesiology. I love the field of health and human performance and such. But I didn't really have any leads, and there's a lot of entry level jobs you can do in that field. I was prepared to do one, but he said, "Well, I've got a graduate assistant position open, and that means that you can get a master's degree at the school.
Mhm.
If you work for the school, they'll pay your tuition and a little stipend as well at Salisbury." And the position that was available that the school was paying was the assistant men's and women's tennis coach. So he said, "Hey, if you want to come back and work with the teams and do grad school here, it's on a 2-year rotation, but it's open. Just let me know." And I think I committed to that in March, a couple months before I graduated. I was more than happy to come back with the program that I love, work with the teams, and do grad school and prolong real life for a couple more years. And so now I'm in grad school coaching tennis for a living. So
Exactly.
I pretty much the opposite. And that's actually a really interesting one, because my father told me after that he said he was going to the University of Maryland to become an engineer. He never wanted to be a teacher. Next thing you know, he changes his major and he's a teacher for 25 years. So there's a little bit of interesting thoughts going on that one. So now I enter grad school, but I tell everyone, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to enjoy a couple more years of tennis. After that, I'm done. I never want to have tennis as a career. I want to go into science. Now I'm studying more advanced health and human performance, physiology, the likes. My first year of grad school, the tennis coaching was a lot. It was 2 teams. My coach, I'm not envious. He coached men and women, and that's 2 jobs, really. I think that's hard. And I was also doing both teams, and it was a grind, and it was tough. And but I was really committed to doing well in the classroom. I wanted to pursue science, and first year I loved it. Was learning a ton, and then the second year I didn't love the classes I was taking. They were the more practical ones. I was a bit jaded about what I was learning. I didn't love the route that it would take me into more of a fixed practice. Maybe I'm a doctor, a physical therapy, kind of doing the same general things each day. Maybe I'm working in a hospital setting, stress testing, aging populations, corporate health and wellness, and these things I found they were quite limiting for me. I wasn't comfortable working in a very narrow scope, which many people are, and it's very lucrative and very impactful. And for me, I was just not, my heart wasn't in it. So I said, let's enjoy this tennis as much as I can. It's my last bit coaching tennis. And I tell you, when I committed to the coaching and just spent, 7 hours a day out there working with the athletes that wanted to get better, building the relationships properly, I couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely loved it. So I told my coach, you know what, I'd go for a head coaching job or a full-time assistant job, which there's not a ton of in Division 3. But I just couldn't do 2 teams. And that's where I actually did keep my word. I ended up getting the head coaching position at Goucher College, which is in Maryland. And it was a lower level than the teams I've been with, but it was a great position. And it was with one team. It was with the men's team. Now, I have to make a note here about another extremely impactful moment of my life where we had actually planned, my head coach and I had planned to kind of split responsibilities a bit. I was going to take 80% of the men's team. He was going to take 80% of the women's team in my final year coaching at Salisbury. But this job came about. Tennis is a spring sport. For those that don't know, this job came about in the fall. So I applied for it and it was going well. And I interviewed and I loved it. And I got offered the position. But I told my head coach, hey, if you tell me not to go here, I won't. I know we've made plans. We have separate travel plans. You're going to be left in the dust a little bit. And he looked at me and said, I remember this moment. We're at dinner after a fall tournament. And he said, Eric, no more questions. All I care about is what's best for you. We'll figure it out. And I couldn't grasp, I couldn't understand. At that moment, I was thinking of things in a very fixed mindset, but he opened up my mind just by that very selfless statement, because he was going to have to work a lot harder than he bargained that year and maybe sacrifice some things. And he did not care at all, only what was best for me. And I still get emotional thinking about this moment, but I've carried that very actively into my coaching career because that was so impactful for me. So gave me the freedom to take that position. And I was 24 as a head coach. I think my oldest player was 22. And I had a lot to learn because I knew maybe a fraction of what I should at that time to be a head coach. A lot more responsibilities than just coaching tennis at that point.
I really believe that great people attract or maybe become great people because of they're blessed to have great people around them. And even in just what we've talked about to date, from your parents through that whole thing, it's just really had the chance to interact with some really exceptional people in your life.
Absolutely. And I think you and I have talked about this a few times, but I consider my life as a bunch of stepping stones that people have placed in front of me selflessly. It's my decision to step on those stones, of course, and to do the best I can while I'm standing on those. But I just look back and opportunities were provided to me selflessly over and over and over again. And I'm very blessed and thankful for the people in my life that have done that. And that's just a recurring theme. It's something that motivates me every day when I'm working with my team, or whether I'm working with your academy and networking with other people from around the world and the things you've built here. And it's just that thought crosses my mind almost every day.
You finished your senior year at Salisbury, obviously on a massive high from a performance level, but it's like school ends and you leave as a student. School begins the next season and you're an assistant coach. And your assistant coach, except I'm assuming for the incoming freshman class, with the same people that used to be your teammates, and now you're suddenly in a coach role and you're maybe 6 or 9 months older at that point than your oldest people. What was it like to make that change, and how did you learn to connect with people and work with them effectively when you've just gone from player to coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember might have been the first day of practice back as an assistant coach now, and I went on the court to coach one of my teammates and say, hey, I think you hit the ball in the wrong place. It was, I don't know, something basic. Why don't you try this? And he fought back and he said, sorry, we're not all as good as you, buddy, or something along those lines. I couldn't believe it. I was so taken aback.
Mm.
But it I needed to build that coaching relationship. I didn't
Mm.
have a coaching relationship. I had a friendship and a teammate relationship. And I had no grasp that I needed a coaching relationship. There was trust in me as a friend, as a person, but not as coach. I don't think he understood um, where I was coming from, and I didn't understand where he was coming from. I didn't know what made him tick. And so very early on, I said, okay, well, I've got to sit down and figure out how to coach everyone individually. It's not just the same way as when you're coaching. I did some younger player coaching all throughout college. I would go back to tennis center as a coach. It's different than that. The new athletes was a bit easier because they had no experience with me beforehand. I had recruited some of them, and so they were kind of ready to go. But it was tough. It was tough. And sometimes, these guys that I'm friends with, teammates with, I just had to sit down and on the bench and let them talk, not say a word, because we already had, they already knew what they needed to do, and they just needed someone to have an ear and not say anything. So I learned a lot of different little lessons about coaching at that time. That was hard. That was tough. It was easier for me to coach the women's team because I hadn't played on the
Mhm.
team with them at that time.
Mhm.
I distinctly remember that.
And do you feel, for instance, with the women's team, and then subsequently in your first role at Goucher, and then later at Haverford, obviously people will respect you and can look you up and say, okay, the guy was an All-American, winningest. So you have credibility as a player. How did you learn to build that credibility as a coach?
It's a great question. I think there is a misconception that being a great player makes you a great coach. And
Exactly.
and fortunately that played in my favor at Goucher because they assumed that if I played at a higher level than they had, that I knew how to coach. But I knew that didn't correlate. Fortunately, I had a bunch of coaching experiences before this. I had spent time at Salisbury learning a lot of relationship building and coaching techniques. I had coached junior players before that. I coached adults. Um, so I did kind of know the X's and O's of coaching on the court. But what I didn't understand at this point was head coaching someone. And head coaching someone, I mean, there is no playbook really. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. There's different techniques. There's philosophies, and what I figured out was I've got to build a relationship first. That's the most important thing. That's the only thing that will allow me to coach them when the match comes around or when we're in a practice setting. I think that misconception that playing at a good level makes you a good coach breached a gap for me because they were ready to listen, but I
Mhm.
still didn't know how to coach them. And so I stumbled along a bit, but I again, more mentors came my way, more opportunities to grow and develop as a coach came my way, and reflecting on mistakes I made, miscommunications, lack of awareness of where people are in their own mind and emotions, and so just starting to bridge those gaps bit by bit really allowed me to go from just being an X's and O's coach to a player driven coach.
And how did that feed into, in your time initially at Goucher, the recruiting process and player management generally?
Sure, I think I realized I needed to, even if it was a recruit from anywhere in the world, and was recruiting internationally very heavily, I needed to have some sort of relationship building moment very early on. And once I felt like I was in a good place with my players, we were on the same page. We wanted to accomplish. We did goal setting. We had meetings to understand what made them tick, and such. Then it was, okay, how do I bridge the gap with these recruits that I might have a 20-minute call with, and then another 20-minute call with, and then text a little bit and email, try and get them on campus. But I'm doing that for 100 of them at a time.
Mm.
And it was tough. It was really hard at first learning to manage that, and painful when they say they don't want to go to your school. Because if you don't build a relationship, it's not painful when they go another direction. But if you do, it hurts. It's like a small breakup with a significant other every time, and gets bigger as you get more serious about them as a recruit. And if they're a top recruit and you offer them a spot and they say no and they go to a competitor of yours, that it hurts. It still hurts every time. But now I've gone through a few hundred of those, so it hurts a little bit less, or maybe the skin's a bit tougher. But just learning the effectiveness of how to build relationships, how to have simple conversations, how to avoid small talk, which doesn't really get anywhere, but still, have more natural moments with people. And I just started studying that. I mean, not necessarily in a book or anything, but just kind of reflecting on experiences and developing conversational techniques. And there was some reading of articles. Dan Tudor runs a recruiting agency. I've met him a bunch of times. He puts out articles almost every week for improving communication methods and effectiveness. So I'm studying, trust me. maybe I was wrong to say there was no book, but kind of piecing that together with my own experiences it just had to be done time after time after time. And I'm not saying I'm great at it now, but I think we've gotten a little bit further along to where it's manageable, and I kind of understand what makes these guys tick that I'm recruiting.
So you had this first opportunity as a men's coach at Goucher. What brought you to Haverford, and what did you find when you first arrived there?
Sure, great question. And I will say, I know you want me to talk about my accolades, so I will.
I do.
But at Goucher, we did have some success. It was 3 years I was there. My first spring, we won the conference, which means you're allowed to go to the national tournament, which is the top. Right now, it's the top 44 teams in the country. Actually, it's not necessarily the top 44 teams in the country. It's about 34 teams that win their conference, and then 10 more teams that are top in the country. Some of those are top in the country, some are not. We were not top in the country, but we were a very respectable level. We had beaten some nationally ranked opponents. We, in our own right, we were achieving things. So winning the conference is a big deal in university sports. Put that on the resume. I was voted coach of the year in the conference. I think a little bit of that is, hey, new coach who cares about things, and we like him. Maybe, let's make him coach of the year in the conference. And so I appreciated that. But those sort of things allow you to take the next opportunity. Now, 2 of my 3 years at Goucher were 2020 and 2021, COVID.
Yeah.
So at that time, we had played a few matches in 2020. I think March 13th, we got shut down. I think I still remember the day. We were about 2 days away from taking our spring break trip to Florida to compete. So we had maybe an eighth of a season, and then no tennis the rest of the spring, no tennis that fall. But we resumed in 2021 in a conference-only schedule, which is about a third of the normal amount of matches you play. I had players, a couple quit the team. Their life changes. Some were international. They didn't want to come back to the U.S. Recruits not come. We had a skeleton roster. I had taken a couple walk-ons just to fill it. And we lost in the conference semifinals that year, I think 5-4 to the team that won it. And that was painful because I'm like, we have one more guy come back. We might have 5-4 our way. And so I learned a lot of lessons there. But that time during COVID actually allowed me, where I'm not on the court as much, it allowed me to sit down and analyze myself and my coaching. And I still, COVID was a tough time. We all know this. But through that, I had spent as much time as I could I created a coaching philosophy. I created a coaching mission statement. I enrolled in a coach development academy program that was virtual, done by Celia Slater. And my gosh, the things that they're presenting, it was almost like a college course for coaching, which doesn't exist. There is no college course for university coaching. There's coaching majors, but they don't prepare you for this.
Right.
And so it was the closest thing. I was learning so much. I was sitting down but to create a philosophy, you have to look at yourself and say, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing well? What am I doing wrong? And what do I want out of this experience? And so a lot of these moments were hard. It's hard to look at yourself and say, what's wrong here? But they provided the route with this coach development academy to do that in a structured manner and with safe spaces where you can interact with other great coaches around the country, individual and group settings. And then I created a recruiting playbook kind of for myself. This is how I'm going to do it. This is the process. These are my messaging techniques. And I mean, this took hours and hours and hours to do these things and self-exploration. But if I didn't have this moment during COVID times, I don't think I'm able to build that foundation that allows me to get into, higher level coaching field of Haverford. So I wanted to bring that to light because now I still try and create those moments for myself. Every week before fall season starts or spring season starts, I shut down all my social engagements. I stop traveling. I sit down for a week and I look at our training plan. I look at my coaching philosophy. I look at our recruiting list, our recruiting, actually more than the list, the process. And I say, all right, how are we going to do things? What do I need to adjust? What do I need to alter? What's going well? What's not going well? Where's the ship headed? Where do we want it to go? And so I think I stole that from you, Carl, and it works well. And don't copyright me. So
no, you can have it, no problem.
Yeah, and so I still make some moments for this, which is so important for anyone in a leadership position. If you can't have things functioning the way they need to be, or at least assessing how things function from time to time, you can't show up best for the people you're leading. And so I learned a lot from that. I think that was recognized by Haverford. I think that's why they wanted to give me the opportunity, because I was coming from a grounded place of decision making for the most part, and I had achieved some things at Goucher. I will say, Haverford students, you said this at the beginning, Haverford students are a special breed, and they kind of recruited me without realizing it to the job. I had met some of them while I was at Goucher through tournaments, or when they played my fall invitational one time. I was just blown away by how much they cared for their teammates, how they could handle the job in the classroom. Very rigorous academic environment. It's very impressive that you got into Haverford, Carl, and succeeded there. It's difficult.
I don't know how, honestly, to this day. That's a different
exactly.
Podcast.
That's what all Haverford students say. But they sit down and they can figure it out. And that's why I would hire Haverford student over many Ivy Leagues at this point, because they've had that more challenging experience in a lot of ways. And so I just saw a lot about that team, and I was always interested, but I wasn't looking to leave. And then the position came open, and I was intrigued. I knew I wasn't going to be at Goucher forever. Even my athletics director at that time knew that. He said he knew that I was going to find a new job at some point. He just didn't know how long it was until then, which I thought was silly at the time, but now I see it as a very high level leadership statement. And I really wanted to do five or more years at Goucher, because then you have your own players. It takes 4 years to recruit your own class, to get your own philosophy in place. But this opportunity at Haverford came up, and it was door open after door open after door open. And my heart was really aligned with what Haverford wants to achieve as a university and what the team could achieve. And I wanted to be a part of it. So fortunately, they gave me the opportunity, and that was in October 2021. So I'm about to hit my 4-year anniversary. and the team is mine.
Again, just to put that in context for people that don't understand, we're talking Division three, but not just a Division three. You're talking about, in the case of Haverford, very small school. When I was there, it was like 1,200 students. Maybe it's a couple hundred more, but it's like that size. And so one of the things that we've talked about Division three is, you are all students first and athletes usually second. It varies by place, but you could have a very small school like Haverford competing against Division three rivals that are 4 or 5 times the size, like a Johns Hopkins, for instance, or a Case Western. So again, the whole context that we're talking about that Eric's in and Eric is coaching is, from a pure sports perspective, you're talking about competing with like one, or if not both of your hands tied behind your back in terms of your ability to recruit, your numerical size and all of that, which again is why the accomplishments that people generically, can make in D3, or that Eric and his team have been able to do, to me, I just think are so exceptional and inspiring in that context. So you arrive at Haverford. I know you mentioned at Salisbury you had 12 great tennis courts. Haverford, up until very recently, and thanks to you, if we had 12, there were probably 12 of the shittiest courts out there. What did you find when you arrived and stepped into that role, kind of day one as coach?
Yeah,
What
so
was it
day
like?
one at Haverford, it looked like a team that, well, they had very strict COVID standards as well. So they really didn't have much tennis for 2 years, almost, probably about 18 months. They didn't really compete, maybe more than one match. So it was a hungry team. It was a strong team. The previous coach had brought in some really good recruits, but it was a team that needed some higher level leadership and vision a bit, because they knew they could accomplish things, but they didn't know how to do it. Really, is the way I look at it now. And but the team leaders, the seniors on the team, a couple of team captains, they cared so much that they had just already spent time giving the team opportunities to get to know each other, to build bonds, to play tennis on their own. And so I realized pretty quick that my role was a bit different. At Goucher, I needed to be facilitating everything, and that's where we were at that time. And at Haverford, I needed to pick and choose what I was facilitating, but provide the alleyway for anybody who wanted more to have it. I didn't need to go and do a team bonding event once a week and do a team dinner. They were already doing that on their own. What I needed to do was bigger picture things. We needed to have a little bit of informal time off the court for the team to connect with myself, at an individual and a group level. What we needed was to say, okay, what are above the line behaviors every day and what are below the line behaviors? And they needed to be defined. And so we set core values, we set goals. We looked at operational values every day. What makes this team tick, and how do we enforce when someone's showing up below the line and holding things back? Were you going to jump in there, Carl?
I'm really going to jump in to give context. Above the line, below the line comes from Urban Meyer, right? I think his book talking about that, what's acceptable, setting a standard, what's acceptable and what's not. I was going to give him credit for it, although I'm a Michigan fan and he coached at Ohio State. So it's a bit painful for me to do that, but credit where credit is due. But yeah, so you set that standard and we're able to do it across the team of what was acceptable and what needed to change, let's call it.
Yeah. And when you do that, you got to solve some situations. People are going to fight back a little bit, and we've got to bridge some gaps. And I wasn't perfect at that, but we had a core group that wanted to get some things done, and they understood why we needed to do what we were doing. And to the above and below the line, I actually have not read that book. I took that one from our mental skills coach, Lauren Becker Rubin, who we've been working with for 3 years now, who's had a massive impact on our program. She's about to finish her master's in sports psychology, but she is a All-American at Brown and Ivy League. She played 2 sports at Brown at the same time.
Wow.
Coached
Wow.
in college for 20 years and has been engaged in the mental skills side of things for years. And so she's a wealth of knowledge, has mentored me and worked with our team directly as well. So I have, like you said, life is stepping stones. So there's another one of them, but credit where it's credit is due. Absolutely. And then, like you said, the courts were in pretty bad shape. A lot of courts had cracks. A lot of courts had dead spots where you drop the tennis ball and it doesn't always bounce back up very high. And so we had issues. We had a lot of things in the program that I thought were, for lack of better terms, below the line. And so when I came in, I remember interviewing, I said, this is going to kind of be a 3-tiered system. It's going to be, one, we're going to recruit the right players, not just the very highest rated that we can sneak out. They need to play at a certain level to impact us, but we need guys that know how to do their job in the classroom and excel there, and want to get better every day, have a growth mindset, and want to be a great team member. Team first, very important for us. So I think that's where I can take some credit, is really, I've turned down players that coaches thought I was silly for, but some of those players haven't panned out on other teams, and all of our guys get better, and all of our guys align with our vision and care about each other. And so that was the number one tier. And the second tier was, how are we going to develop our players and our culture? So developing our players and our culture at a high level. Imparted a bunch of techniques to do this on the court, providing opportunities to train, improving our practice methodology, which the team has pushed me to do a better job at. Communicating what they were going to do at practice ahead of time was never something I did. I showed up and told them what we're going to do. Now, at the beginning of the week, I send them a general structure of how practices will go every week. And you know what it does? It prepares their mind so they can come more ready to play. So they've pushed me to be a better on-court coach as well. And developing along with that is just developing our culture. So making sure we're providing informal opportunities to connect with myself and the team, handling issues when they come up, because if you're going to be tight-knit, you're going to fight sometimes. And one term we use is, I took this one from the University of Maryland football coach, Mike Loxley, who I have great respect for in the American football college coaching realm. And is a term, moral courage. And moral courage, we kind of define it. It goes different ways, but mainly telling someone what they need to hear, even if they don't always want to hear it, in a respectful manner. And so we encourage our guys to say, hey, you're practicing next to your teammate and they're not moving their feet or giving effort. Hey, it's time to move your feet and give effort in a way that works for them. And so encouraging that sort of thing. I have lots of opportunities. I've seen them do that without being asked, to push their teammates to be better. And so things like that go a really long way. And then the third tier was developing the program a little bit every year, whether it was fundraising a little bit more money so we can take an overnight trip, whether it was starting a plan so that we can rebuild our 12 courts that are in shambles, whether it's higher level of organization with our administration so they know more what we want to accomplish, whether it's the students understanding better how to communicate with professors when conflicts arise, right? So little things that you can just find forever in a program that how do we do this at a higher level, at above the line level. And I created a long list of things I wanted to work on, and we've still got a long list, but we've moved a lot of things in the right direction, and that allows us to function more smoothly. A well-oiled machine is one way to look at it. And I think we've been pretty well oiled for a couple of years now, and that provides the opportunity to drive a little faster, right? So that was what I saw and started. But figuring out how to do these things practically is often a challenge. The students are in a very rigorous environment academically. They've got a lot on their plate. I can't always ask them for more time. And we have to be creative in the ways we do things, more effective with the time we have, more clear communication of what needs to be done as a team member. And so doing that effectively is sometimes a challenge. And we've got a lot of great coaches at Haverford. I know a lot of great coaches in Division III tennis, Division I tennis, other sports that I can talk to about how they do things. And that's how you learn as a coach the most is talking to other coaches who do things well.
In other fields, where if you were to reach out to someone that was a peer or even a competitor of yours, you're not going to get a lot of receptivity and willingness to help you out. But among coaches, have you found that people are receptive and happy to share with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more so in the Division 3 tennis realm than in Division 1, where often jobs rely on performance. I think our jobs in Division 3 rely a little bit less on performance. Keeping your job, I should say, relies a little less on performance than it relies on the students being successful holistically. And so that provides us the route to collaborate as coaches. Now, if I call our biggest rivals coach, the Swarthmore coach, and ask him for his recruiting list, he's probably not going to give that to me. But if I ask him, hey, how have you handled this situation when your student athlete, might have skipped class, or there's a conflict here, how have you handled that? They're more than willing to share, because we want to make the sport better. And we want our athletes to have the best experiences possible. And we don't all know everything. So we're very aware of that too. But I do think that there's a very collaborative atmosphere in Division 3 men's and women's tennis coaching.
Mhm.
But I'm very thankful for the friends I have who are out of division as well, who will talk about things like their recruiting list in detail, and I can analyze that and how they're doing things at a high level. I'm thankful for your academy, and I've got connections with people around the world who are functioning as CEOs and at a high level, and I can ask them who are not in sport, how are you doing these things? How are you managing? How are you leading? And I get a completely different, amazing perspective. But yeah, absolutely. I think in Division 3, we want to make it better for our students.
Very cool. So let's jump ahead for a moment. 4 years later, or I guess 3 years later, last year's season, talk to us about how that went and accomplishments and what that basically, just talk us through how last year went for you guys as a team.
Sure, I'll start with the end and then give the interesting information. So my 4th year at Haverford, spring of 2025, we did have a historic year statistically. We got the highest ranking the team had ever had. We reached 16 in the country for part of the season. We ended at 18. We were able to make it to the national tournament, which is the second time in 30 years, the second time ever, and second in 30 years that the program had done this. We won the first round at the national tournament, which is the first time that the program's ever done it. And people forget this, but we had a team GPA average of 3.83. So we also, held our end in the classroom, which is important to note, I think. We don't sacrifice. We moved everything at a higher level. And I was able to receive the Regional Coach of the Year award. There are 4 regions, so that was a very high honor. I am going to sound humble here, but I firmly believe this. It should have been called Program of the Year award, because it is performance-based in a sense, and the team are the ones on the court. I would be happy to be a part of that award, but I don't think it should be my award. So there's my humble plug, but the team would have earned that this year. And so it was really wonderful. But Carl, the most interesting thing was when we started the fall, it was not a year without hiccups. I only returned one of my expected top 4 players. So
only one of 4 returned.
Of the top 4, and in Division 3 university tennis, you play 6 in a lineup. So 3 of my top 6 players I didn't have for various reasons, all legitimate. And the one that I returned had a wonderful year the year before. He was a very strong player, strong leader for us. But then I was just thinking, this might be tough. This might be tough. We've set up a really hard schedule. And now, we've got to see what we can do. But we knew this before the fall started. So before the beginning of the school year began. And when I was really wondering how our first team meeting was going to go before we kicked off the season. I sat down with the team and we discussed the players that were gone, and we were all on the same page there of what we've got to do now. Our roster's now 11. We're going to have 14. And the team said to me, "Hey, coach, why can't we do this? Why can't we win the conference? Why can't we go to the national tournament? We believe we have everything we need in this room right now." And I was floored. I had my doubts, to be completely honest. I wasn't sure because as coaches, I don't love stats, but you have to look at them to analyze things. And I was worried about our stats of our team, but the team was 100% in belief that they could accomplish something this year. And I said, "All right, guys, you really want to do that? We're going to have to step a couple things up." And they said, "Yes, coach, we'll do it." I said, "Are you sure?" They said, "Yes, coach, we want to do whatever we can this year." And let me tell you, they did. We changed some things. We trained at a higher level. I pushed them harder, not necessarily exhausting them more, but I pushed them harder out of their comfort zone a lot and built them into more competitors mentally. Um, we trained our fitness at a higher level. The players in our off season where I'm not on the court with them, they came back to me and said they had trained more on their own volition than I'd ever seen from a team I've coached. That goes a very long way. And these are the things it was reminding me to go way back 45 minutes of myself. I was training in the off season because I knew I wanted to accomplish something in season. I was doing extra fitness work. I was reading this book about, the inner game of tennis, and I was seeing this from my players and I was inspired. And I said, "Okay, we've got something good going here." It was not without hiccups. We still had a couple personnel issues throughout the year. We had a very serious thing happen with one of our players, and the team handled it at an extremely mature level. And I was just blown away. I don't know if I was looking at things that way when I was 19 years old, but the leadership of our team handled conflict really at a high level because conflict will happen. It's not going to happen. And it all depends on how you handle it and your resilience to it. And so because of the training they did, the preparation they did, we stayed very injury free. We found our lineup in singles and doubles that was consistently effective. And our leaders, just whenever there was a day where people were down or tired or had tough classes, they were ready to step in and say, "All right, guys, remember what our goals are. Remember what we want to accomplish. Let's get back to that. Let's have the best day we can today." And so it really gave me the alleyway to coach how I really wanted to coach. And the team inspired me this year. And I'll take a little credit for crafting mindsets along the way and recruiting the right players, but they did a lot of work this year and we're able to accomplish some things. But I see it as 4 years of progress. We've been chipping away at the culture, at the recruiting, at the player development, at the program for 4 years. And I think we still have a bit of a ways to go. But cementing ourselves in that top 20 of the country last year, that really felt good. And I think it got a lot of people excited. And so it allows things to continue to grow. And we're trying to use that momentum of the boulder rolling down the hill to continue to improve. And so this year we sat down at the beginning of the fall and I said, "What do you guys want to accomplish?" And they had even more lofty goals. And we've got some strong players on the team now, and strong first years on the team that have come in now who want to accomplish things as well. And it's a joy to show up to practice because they want to get work done. So it's the process that we're embracing. The big thing for us, Carl, is wins and losses are a side effect of your actions every day. Winning and losing is not in your control. The player you're going to play against, not in your control. The wind, the sun, even how you feel is not in your control. What's in our control? Our preparation, gripping the tennis rackets. Our fitness is very much in our control for the most part, unless you suffer an injury or a health issue. We can control if we're a fitter team on the court than the other team. And so explaining to the team what we can control and really trying to maximize that is our goal right now. And that's a lot of how we've been able to accomplish.
And Eric, just again thinking about last year and that historic result on all of those levels, national ranking, first national win at the first round of national tournament ever. And that with a team where 3 out of your 4 top expected players didn't show up. From that, you assume that you had a lot of success developing the balance of the team over the years to contribute to that. Could you just talk us through that a bit in terms of just the ability to develop players over time and that kind of partnership between a D3 student athlete who opts in and wants to do it, and then a coach that wants to help them do it? What does that look like in terms of people's development?
Yeah, a lot of it starts in recruiting, of just letting them know that, hey, when you come to this rigorous academic environment, academics is the first priority. You've got to take care of business in the classroom and do a great job and be preparing for your outcome after university. But tennis can be 1A, 1B, 1C. You can be involved in clubs, you can be socially doing things, no problem. But if you're going to come here, we're going to have a certain expectation of you being willing to put something into the team on and off the court, and you're going to get back what you put in. It's not linear. Doesn't mean if you work really hard, you're going to win every time. I think the team probably understands that at this point. But what we can do is provide the opportunity for them to get better as fast as they want in tennis. I'm on the court an hour before practice every day with the basketballs for anybody that wants to get there early and practice their serve, play some points out, work on their footwork. Every single day, there's an opportunity to do more if they'd like. We have 2 strength coaches that work with the team. They're there all day, every day. So there's more opportunity to do gym work if they want. Our mental skills coach, Coach Lauren, she has been willing to do one-on-one conversations, group sessions, pretty much whenever we have a need for it. We set up a consistent basis of training with her as well. She comes to the court, she comes to the classroom, whatever we need. We talk nutrition. I can't give diet advice because I'm not a registered dietitian. We do have a registered dietitian on campus if somebody wants a meal plan. But we talk sports nutrition. We provide them hydration drinks. Like, these guys have everything they need to be successful. They've created that environment for them that there are no limitations. And then it's up to them to accomplish what they want, and letting them know that they can accomplish things and allowing them to believe in themselves. That's my job. I think that's the most powerful thing as a coach. And that's where it goes back to, I'm very thankful that I learned to build relationships first. Very early on in recruiting, I'm starting to learn what these guys are interested in off the court, what makes them tick, how they like to approach tennis mentally. And when they get here, it's, you're already in 5th gear going. And so understanding that they need to trust me off the court, that I'm in this for the best, for their health and them as a human first before tennis is really, really the key. And then that allows us to have that alleyway. But, I also tell them, hey, if you're a really great player in the recruiting process, but you don't care about the team, this isn't the place for you. This is about team first. You have to develop. It's an individual sport. You have to develop your tennis. You have to think about yourself. But this is team first. If you're not looking at team first, there's other programs there for you, so you'll fit in just fine. But letting them know, the other thing is, if they're going to come here for 4 years and want to develop, they really got to love tennis. They can't kind of half like tennis or be burnt out. And so I really make that clear too. Like, this is a team where guys want to play more, and they want to embrace that journey. It's a personal journey as well as just on the court. But just the clear expectations is a big one, Carl, and then providing them all the opportunities they need to do it, and then doing it in a respectful manner, because it's a small school. It's very rigorous academically, and people see things here. You don't slip into the shadows in a small school. So our conduct matters. Are you treating people well across campus? If a Haverford tennis player does something bad, now they're going to think of your best friend on the team as someone that did something bad, even though they didn't do it because they're wearing Haverford tennis as well. So right. It's conduct matters to us as well in that manner. I know it went a lot of different directions there.
It's great. There's a thing definitely in hiring, like for a company, or I think about it also, in the academy, that you are defined not just by who you let in, but by who you don't. Like,
Mm.
and it's usually actually in a lot of ways the second one that is the one that really kind of distinguishes you, because it's usually very specific reasons. How involved are the students and team members in terms of just the recruiting process and helping recruits understand the operative culture of the team beyond what you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I basically as much as possible. I think when I choose to bring a recruit on campus, it's because I think they could be a contributing member of the team and a good fit. I don't really bring recruits on campus, just bring them on campus. So the team understands that. And I tell everyone my goal is when I announce recruits on campus, at the bare minimum, everybody shakes their hand and says, hello, how are you? Where are you from?
Mhm.
That's even if you've got class all day. If you have a spare moment, find the recruit, shake their hand, hello. That's all I ask. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Totally understand. Everybody's busy. You got 8 hours of class that day. You probably don't have a chance. No problem. But we want to be a welcoming atmosphere. We want to show them that if someone's going to potentially be a member of this team, this is what you're going to get. And then, I have a meeting with them. I spend some time with the parents. Maybe they do a campus tour, information session, audit a class. But outside of the fundamentals of a visit, my goal is to give them as much time as possible with the team,
Mhm.
and even informally. So
Mhm.
maybe I set up a lunch that's a little more formal, but nothing for the next 20 minutes. And they go back to the apartment together while one of them strings a racket and they hang out and get to know each other. That's where the golden recruiting happens. Because then the recruit will know if this is a place they want to be. The team will know if this is a recruit that they might like to be team members with, and everybody can kind of figure things out from there. But I think Carl, you mentored me in this a little bit because in your previous job, you were very much a part of the recruitment and addition of high performing um, workers in the company, and you've shared some great advice here. And so now I just try and have as many touch points, if not more, with the team than with myself. And I don't give the players on the team necessarily a checklist like, does this recruit check out or not? Don't give them a grade or anything. I just ask them, is this someone you might like to play on the team with? But that's, especially for a recruit, like that's what they need in a visit.
It is going back to what you're talking about before. College level tennis, maybe with the exception of something like the Davis Cup or maybe occasionally the Olympics. It's so interesting because you have other sports. Like, we have a lot of students who are ex-rugby players. I mean, that is a pure, in every single context, only team sport, and it's just amazing, and it just produces amazing results. But yeah, the thing about tennis, it is, as you were saying, it's such an individual sport that to be able to build a team out of that, and a team culture, and a team that, like you're talking about, reinforces and has it in an otherwise individual sport, I think it's such a huge accomplishment to be able to do that.
No, I
So
appreciate it. Yeah, it's complex, but it's simple at the same time.
I guess one of the benefits of being in a program for the 4 years to date that you've been there is being able to watch the development of people over the years. Have people been able to really develop and up tier in terms of skill and performance and contribution to the team?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I could go down the roster and explain all of their journeys. Truly amazing. I think one that really stands out is one of my players who was actually a walk on, because when I first got hired, I didn't really have much time to craft a recruiting class. It was only about a month before the first deadline of admission. And fortunately, we had a guy who, pardon me, who wanted to get in to Haverford on his um, pause. Let's restart
No problem.
that.
Good. Take your time.
Yeah, so So for one specific example, we had a guy that loved Haverford, wanted to be here, wanted to be a part of the team, and I took him as a walk on, which is essentially somebody that I haven't gone through a full recruiting process with, got into the school on their own. But we have space on the team where we needed guys that love tennis and want to be part of the team first, fit all of those things wonderfully. I told him right away, you'll likely be, it's going to be a struggle for a starting spot for a while. And I just wanted to be very clear with him. I was very respectful about this. It might have been a little softer tone when I talked to him, but I let him know, if you want to play, these are the things you've got to do. Well, we gave, essentially a list of how he can develop his fitness, his technique, and he really needed match play. He had always kind of played tennis, but never competitively that much. And I told him, you got to get out there and play. Like, call your teammates and play some practice sets before we play and get at that experience. A lot of these guys have come playing 30 to 50 tournaments per year, every year of high school before college. You have 3 on your record from all of high school. So, you're behind in these ways. And he was completely receptive. So he was 12 out of 12 on the team his first year, but he got to work. 18 months later, he makes the starting lineup at number 6 out of, I think, 13. Wow. And let me tell you, he probably doubled his skill level on the court.
Wow.
Next year, his junior year, he gets accepted into med school in an early assurance program. He's got a 4.0 GPA midway through his junior year, and now he's 4 on the team, and he's winning matches. And this guy, man, it blew me away what he's done. And again, everyone on the roster, I could share their story as well of how they've developed and gone above and beyond what they're asked to do and what they're expected to accomplish. But I think he's one of our clearest stories of we're providing the alleyway to get better and embracing it. And something I didn't share, but I talk to the team before we start every year. I share them my coaching philosophy. My coaching philosophy doesn't have the word tennis in it. My coaching philosophy is to provide my student athletes the challenges and experiences to become a better version of themselves because of their time spent in the program. Tennis is the alleyway that we access that. But I want them to become better versions of themselves. I want 4 years where they're getting better on the court, they're excelling in the classroom, and preparing for the rest of their life as a contributing team member and learning life skills along the way. And when they go from that human first perspective, but they see that alleyway to accomplish in tennis, that's when the opportunities can be really unlimited. But you have to approach it from a non-tennis perspective because people are people. They're humans. They need to build relationships. They need to know that you care. And then we can go the route we need to go on the tennis court. And I think this guy I'm speaking of has embraced it, one of the best I've seen in my entire coaching career. And he's done it in a healthy manner. He's become a team leader. He's winning a lot of matches that 2 years ago I would have probably written him off for. And so, it's complex, but it's simple, Carl. These are the things I'm talking about here. And again, everyone's got that story, and we've got guys that have worked hard and not made the starting lineup, but they're still extremely valuable members of the team. If their voices are heard and they push their team members to be better, and if that's what is satisfying them about their experience, then everybody's in business.
Eric, we've been delighted to know you for these 4 years, and we've done some work together outside. But delighted to have you in addition as a student in our academy on the CEO of Self course. How have you found that, and has it been helpful to you on and off the court and otherwise?
Oh gosh, it's just, that's the one regret in my life that I took this course. No, I'm just kidding. Carl, you said it, I think, when we talked maybe a month after I got hired back in 21, that I was the CEO of the tennis program. Mm-hmm. And that's, for those that are listening, you can hear all the different facets that my job entails, not just sitting on the tennis court. And you really helped me by saying that, a light bulb turned on. Something clicked when you told me that I needed to approach this from a slightly different perspective than just tennis coach. And CEO of tennis program is a lot more applicable. And so when you came back around and said, "Hey, this CEO of Self Academy is going. Do you want to be a part of it?" I was over the moon. I was so excited to be a part of something where I could sit with people in a room on Zoom and learn from those that are actually titled CEO or own businesses or president, and start to understand at a higher level how to operate as a leader. And through the teachings that you gave each session, I mean, just massive impact. We could do, I think we had 12 sessions, right, of trainings formally. You could do a whole year-long class on each session, because what it's really doing is saying, hey, if you're a leader, you've got to show up for yourself before you can show up for other people. And these are the techniques to do it. So I've benefited a ton from, I mean, we could go down the list. I probably should have written one out and just put it in the chat here, but you know, anything from weekly check-in, which can be very short and non-time consuming, but just to check in with yourself, it changes everything. It changes everything. It shows, okay, am I on track here? Where am I mental, emotionally? How am I showing up for the other people in my life? What do I need to improve? What do I need to clear my throat more as we're getting better here? and and then, you know, bigger picture topics that you've shown, self-compassion. You know, for us competitive folks that have people depending on us every day, how to do self-compassion in an effective manner, in a productive manner, is something that they don't teach you anywhere. So I've been very thankful for that. I mean, like I said, I can go down the list, but I've ingrained a lot of your teachings and lessons learned from other people on the academy into my everyday and my planning routines and reflection on a really a daily, weekly, quarterly, and yearly perspective. And it's just had a huge impact on my ability to have self-awareness and show up for the people around me. You know, that's kind of the big picture overview of how that's gone. But I don't know if you're expecting all that, but it's really been huge.
Eric, you mentioned before about speaking the language of sport. What is that?
Well, I think that there are, outside of spoken words, there are international languages. And I think one of those is music. I think music can bring people together, no matter who you are, where you're from, or what language you speak audibly. I think there's a lot of things out there, but one of the big ones is sport. You know, as we know, is sport. Some cricket matches get 20% of the world tuning in from dozens and dozens of countries. And while I never trained classically in music or speaking other languages very well, which I learned the hard way this summer on a family trip to Sicily, I think sport is my language that I've learned to speak and navigate in. Not just tennis, I've played other sports, none of them really at a high competitive level, but I can go out and play basketball or, you know, I've learned cricket, I've learned the format of many sports that are big around the world. And that's an amazing way to find common ground and bond with people from very different backgrounds. I myself, when I was playing growing up, especially at the JTCC Academy, there were a lot of international families there. You hear different languages just walking around the place. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. Everybody's there for tennis. Even on our team, actually, this is a big deal for me. I don't necessarily have goals or certain checklists in recruiting, but I think all but two of our players would either be classified as international student, lived in another country growing up, or are born to immigrants to the country. Almost all of our team comes from a different background and perspective. And I think that's a really big deal for our culture. And these guys from all different parts of the world, grew up in Serbia, Taiwan, Singapore, India, it doesn't matter. The US, everybody can come together because of the common ground of tennis. And then I think that's one thing that's given me the opportunity to meet a lot of people around the world and build great relationships.
Mm-hmm. One of the things about tennis and what we've been talking about together is, again, that kind of classic example of tennis parents, super pushy, pushing a child in, and you can go a long way, just like you could do taking standardized tests, right? Being pushed to do something, etc., but not have the interest and the curiosity and the drive. And we have lots of examples of players that flame out, right? And your arc, because of this incredible parenting and support of your family, is a very different one. And you've had this continued long-term upward trajectory into it. Are you still continuing to play now? And what does that look like?
Yes. I've kept up my tennis throughout the years. I guess I graduated in 2016. So I'm coming up on 10 years graduation. And there's been times where I've not played much tennis, and there's times where I've played quite a lot of tennis. But especially in the Philadelphia area where we are now, there's a good set of tournaments over the summer where if I'm not traveling for recruiting or personal reasons, I'm not on the court coaching. So I'm able to spend a little more time playing, get in some tennis sessions with a couple of my buddies and compete in these tournaments. And so that's a lot of fun because the competitive journey, like I said, since I was born pretty much is a big deal. It fuels my heart, my passions, and it gives me, a reason to stay fit and active, at the bare minimum. But last year, when I turned 30, there's in the United States Tennis Association, they start age group tennis, so 30 to 35, 35 to 40, all the way up to I think age 90. And one of my good friends is also a college coach. He's in the 60s age group by now, and he's winning tournament after tournament after tournament. And he gave me great advice because I'm used to playing a lot and knowing what I'm going to get for my tennis, and it's hard when you play sporadically. He said, you just got to put yourself out there. Just, whether you're prepared or not, as long as you're healthy, just put yourself out there. Go play. I did that last summer. I committed to a couple of tournaments. I played singles and doubles through a bunch of pretty high level adult tournaments, and I was actually able to win two of them. It's again, I don't think I was always the better player, but I showed up fit. I showed up mentally resilient, and I embraced that journey of the emotional up and downs of a tennis match. And one, it reminds me what my players are going through. It's a hard sport. All sports are hard, and tennis has its own way of being hard. It reminds me of their journey, and it gives me the empathy towards it and reminds me what they need coaching wise. And then because I happened to win a little bit, it's fun. And I think just by playing the right tournaments and winning the right ones, I was able to go for top 10 in the men's 30s age group in the country. I don't know if I'm beating all those guys every day, but I was able to have some success. And I just think I share that because tennis is meant to be a lifelong sport. And because of my parents allowing me to play on my own volition and giving me the flexibility to grow into it versus forcing me to do something or something along those lines, I still love the sport. I still love the journey that it provides. And I hope that that's for my players as well. I've got two of my assistant coaches this year on volunteer basis, not getting paid, are former players of mine who live in the area, and they just love being on the court with the team and being a part of things. And that's just as valuable to me as any of it. Finding a sport is a part of your life.
Amazing. It's the definition of being a player coach, literally. Eric, first of all, thank you so much for your time with us today. The name of this podcast is Better for Having Met Them. And of course, that is designed for you, the guest, and certainly how I feel about you. And over the course of our discussion, there's been so many exceptional people in your life, and I know you feel very blessed that they are. Just ask you a quick question about a last one, if you don't mind. In that picture behind you is a picture of your grandfather. Is that? And did you get to know him quite well?
Yes, I believe he passed away when I was under the age of 10. I was near 10. But what you can't see on that photo is the three guys standing next to him at a nightclub in New Jersey in, I think, the late 50s, I want to say.
Mhm.
And they're in suits and ties and bow ties and things like that. I don't think we wear those same things now, but he was, I have great memories of him. We played, we had fun together. We'd watch, our big thing was Superman, the old Superman cartoons. We'd watch those and we'd wrestle and such. And it was a lot of fun, great memories. But he was also a very high character guy. And I've spent some time with my uncle this summer, um, one of my grandpa's children, of course, and he's told me about different stories of very moments that define even my uncle's life. Like, for example, my grandpa was working as an engineer and he had business out in New Mexico where my uncle was living. And he flew out on the company's dime to do the business, but he took another day or two with my uncle to I don't know, hang out or something. And he could have easily just expensed that to the company and brushed it under the rug, but he paid his way. And for everything personal he did, he paid his own way for it. And then when it was back on company time, he paid with the company. And my uncle was blown away by this as a, I don't know, 19-year-old or something, because of, it's a high character move that nobody would have known if he did otherwise. But he was doing it for grounded, high character reasons. And so, of course, it's fun having a cool picture of my grandpa up here, but it reminds me of these things as well. And yeah, you said I've shared great mentors in my life. This is only a fraction. We could do a whole podcast on probably all the other stepping stones that people have done, and my other grandpa and my grandmas as well, and I've had good relationships with all of them, and but yeah, I think I really appreciate you highlighting that. You know how important it is for me to know what the people in your life are doing for you. I'm thankful to have had people supporting me and giving me opportunities along the way. And I can encourage everyone else, who might not have this stable family situation. They might have more difficult family situations, but find the moments where people care about you and find the people in your life that really care and don't leave them behind. Keep them close. Go out of your way to visit them when you can. Call them once a week and just say, how are you doing? What's going on? 5-minute call, because those things go a really long way in this society where we're pulled lots of different directions by technology and being integrated. But I think these reminders are always great for all of us.
Totally agree. And Eric, thank you so much for your time and your insight and for sharing all of this with us.
That makes two of us, Carl. Thank you for everything you've done for myself and everyone else in the academies, but you've done it selflessly, and the way you equip us allows us to impact more people. So thank you, Carl.
Thank you.